Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Catterall versus Prograis fight. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Catterall is 29-1 with 30 KOs and Prograis is 29-2 with 24 KOs. This fight is a 12-round fight in the super lightweight division. Catterall's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Taylor, and Prograis' last fight was a loss via unanimous decision versus Haney. This is in Catterall's home country of England. They are both southpaws. Prograis is 35 and Catterall is 31. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I mentioned, 12-round fight, and a fight in which is nice to actually see happening. Obviously, it was announced a little while ago that this was going to happen, and then the date got pushed back for an injury, I believe, to Jack Catterall. But now it's a big stage for him. Obviously, it's selling in the co-op arena. It's going to be interesting to see how it sells, how kind of big it is, and it's going to be interesting to see, like I say, how many people are there, because Catterall, in my opinion, isn't a huge ticket seller. I think Matchroom have invested a lot into the rematch versus Taylor to really try and push him and really try and generate a Manchester type fan base for him. But I'm just not necessarily sure if he's quite there yet with it, and I'm not too sure, if this fight is big enough in my opinion to kind of warrant a co-op arena, the first ever boxing fight in the co-op arena. But like I say, you never know. I might be wrong. Of course, they have to do it for a reason, and they have done it for a reason. So it's not like they're just hoping that the ticket sale. There probably has been good ticket sales in the first place, and obviously UFC went to co-op arena and did really good numbers, and that was at 5 in the morning when they put their show on. So I'd imagine this won't be too bad, but it's Catterall moving on in his career after the kind of whole spell with Josh Taylor, in which it was obviously two fights, but it got drawn out for a long time, and it really did, I think, slow down his career and slow down his development a bit. Obviously what happened in the first fight was a bad decision, and he was deserving of the rematch. Of course he was, but like I say, I feel like because he was waiting around for so long, then he came back for Dara Foley, and that was a really excellent performance. But he was waiting a long time in between then. Also signed with Matchroom then, and then of course eventually had the fight with Josh Taylor, which even got pushed back a bit as well. So there was a lot of delay to it, and like I say, really kind of putting his career on hold, to be honest, and putting his development on hold. And when you're in your early 30s and late 20s, early 30s, you don't really want to be sitting around too much, because they are realistically your prime years, and it feels like perhaps he has been sat around a little bit longer than which I'm sure he's wanted to. But like I say, it's a return and a moving on in his career, and now is starting to get involved in the world names in the super lightweight division, and in a division which is completely stacked. I mean, I'm going to name some names at the end of my prediction, just to say who he could go on to move on to fight next. But like I say, it's a very stacked super lightweight division currently, so it's going to be difficult for him to kind of make himself stand out enough to get a world title shot, but you never know, and perhaps this is the best way to do it. I probably would say that this is a pretty good way to do it. Prograis is still a big name in boxing, and he's still a big American name as well. And a lot of a lot of fans out in America will know who Regis Prograis is, and it's a nice kind of moving along fight. Prograis is no longer realistically a big matchroom name. When he got bought in, he had a lot of hype around him, and he was, of course, Eddie Hearn's going to speak good about him, of course. But like I say, there was a lot of kind of seemingly different promotions that wanted his signature, and a lot of talk about who's going to go with. And then when he did sign, it was like, now this is a big name to get involved in the world kind of level for Matchroom, and let's push along. And he was going to get instantly a fight with Paro, where if he'd have fought Paro, it would have been interesting to see if he'd have won or not. Of course, Paro would have come in as the underdog, but we just seen what Paro did versus Matthias, so that still would have been an entertaining fight. And if he does beat Catterall here, then I probably would enjoy to see that still. But Then of course instead he ended up fighting Danielto Zorrea, where perhaps he was underestimating him, and overlooking him, and really didn't put out the best of performances, and it was a close fight. And then after that, fought Haney, and he got completely outclassed, completely outboxed the entire fight for that. And so, like I say, I don't think he's no longer the biggest of names in the kind of matchroom stable anymore. And of course, this is why he's having to go to Catterall's home country to fight him. And of course, the last time he was in the UK, he fought Josh Taylor and he lost. And that was obviously a Josh Taylor who was on such a great rise and was progressing so well. But like I say, it's not been the best so far for himself in the UK. In the way of UK events, this is probably arguably the biggest one in at least a couple months in which Matchroom have put on. There's been a lot of discussion about there being poorer Matchroom UK events since Riyadh season's gotten involved, because of the fact of all the big fighters want to fight for Riyadh season, and that's where the money's at, and there's not really much of a there's not really much of a want for the big fights to be made elsewhere. And of course it's being pushed back as well. Like I mentioned, I feel like it has been a little while and since we've had a good big Matchroom UK event. Probably the last one was Catterall versus Taylor, so Catterall seems to be the main one kind of running things in the UK that isn't fighting on Riyadh season, but he might even go on to their next. But like I say, it's nice to see a good Matchroom UK event, which has got a solid undercard with some decent names on it, with like Gomez Jr. Vespalotti is a decent fight, and a couple of decent fights on it as well. But like I say, with a solid main event in which I believe here. Obviously, like I mentioned, they are both southpaws, so I think that's definitely going to play a bit of a factor. I think Catterall has a bit of a tendency, or perhaps it was just with Taylor, they seem to be clashing heads a lot, and that was the orthodox versus southpaw. Of course, Catterall being southpaw, and Taylor being orthodox. They seem to clash heads quite a bit, especially earlier on in the fight, and so I think that's going to at least eliminate something like that in this fight. And like I say, there is a bit of an age gap, and of course, Prograis here is probably going to be coming into it more eager than ever, because he is going to be really wanting to showcase that he's not over the hill and he's not kind of washed or anything like that. He's still got a lot left to give. Catterall, as a fighter though, he's got fast hands, he's got an excellent jab. It's a jab in which he puts together very nicely. He pulls it back, lets it go over and over again. He'll pair it up, he'll triple it up, he will quadruple it up. It's a beautiful, like I say, jab, and probably is his best asset. And yeah, it's just very nice to see, and he was having a lot of success when he was throwing that in Flores versus Taylor. Like I say, he's very good at pairing up and up elsewhere, putting shots together when it's them same shots. He's well positioned. I think he doesn't square up. I believe a lot of his work is off a good stance, and he works well off his front foot. He's good at fighting at his pace, and setting that pace. It's not really particularly the fastest of paces, but he is able to catch you coming in, and he did do that versus Taylor into the later part of the fight. But he is, like I say, typically, because of his jab, able to fight at his pace and set a pace, and in general he does set up all of his shots. He picks when to attack very well and is relaxed a lot of the time. I think Prograis is relaxed a lot of the time as well. Perhaps doesn't pick when to attack quite as well, but I believe they're both relaxed, and of course they're both used to now fighting this 12-round distance. So it's going to be the battle of who's going to be more relaxed and who's going to be the actual better technician. He's got good straight shot combinations. He finds range well. He's consistent in his work, brings his shots back nicely, and lines you up well as well. And negatives, I suppose, about him, he can rush in a little bit at times if he does get you hurt. I think it's because he has that lesser power than that of Prograis, and that lesser power in general. I believe when he does actually get you hurt, I think he can rush in a bit, because it's quite a rarity when he does get somebody really hurt. And so, like I say, he perhaps get a bit excited and eager to rush in because of that. And Prograis did get hurt and kind of has been hurt in his past two fights, so perhaps he might do the same. He might hurt Prograis, but like I say, I don't think he should be rushing in. His timing for the bigger shots often is off. Like I say, he did time Taylor with a very nice shot into the later part of their fight, but he was kind of waiting for that shot for quite a while. He's got a lowly lead hand, less physical, and of course, like I said, it has less power. Circling off the ropes, he doesn't necessarily do that amazingly. He does it, kind of well, but doesn't do it amazingly, and can kind of just hold his feet at the ropes. And Haney was able to move around off the ropes and not be stuck in one position throughout the whole fight versus Prograis, and that's what pretty much just nullified him. He can be kept in a corner, can wait in range. His fighting on the inside isn't excellent, and Progress probably will let the fight be at a mid range, but I would say that perhaps his fight on the inside might be better. He does slow down throughout the fight. Catterall and Progress' style isn't too fast of a pace and isn't, it's just going to be continual to walk you down. So I don't necessarily think he'll slow quite as much as perhaps Catterall might do if he is put on the back foot throughout the whole fight. His shot selection can be limited. I think he doesn't necessarily throw the best of hooks, or goes to the body too much, or really times another nice shot other than the left overhand. He does give up the centre of the ring. I don't necessarily know how comfortable he is attacking in the centre of the ring. Like I say, I think he does give that up, and his pressure, when he's dealing with pressure, I think that's where he can struggle perhaps a bit at times. Progress as a fighter, of course, like I say, he's powerful, and he's definitely going to kind of build up these big power shots and wait to let them go. And he definitely could catch anybody with them at any point. So he might catch Catterall at some point, and Catterall perhaps hasn't really been in or had to deal with too much of a powerful punch as of yet. He's got awkward head movement. I think his head movement has improved. I think his style has changed a lot throughout his career, and that's just kind of his team, I suppose, changing things. And I think he has become able to move his head better, and like I say, has them awkward movements, especially earlier on in the fight, in which he'll use well. And Taylor's head movement was very limited throughout the whole fight. That's why he was consistently getting caught with a jab with Catterall's. So I think Prograis might offer something a little bit different there. He walks you down. He has a high guard. Perhaps it does drop into the later rounds, but typically it is quite a high guard, which he will try and catch shots with. He doesn't seem to chase opponents, and is comfortable just kind of letting you do your thing and letting you tire yourself out in the centre of the ring. He's relaxed as well. Like I say, he pumps a good straight shots, a good straight left through. He puts his all into his shots. He goes around the guard relatively nicely. He controls the centre. He doesn't realistically waste too much energy, like I say, rushing in or trying to force the fight or trying to chase you. That's something in which he has improved on as well. Negatives about him, I think, it's been interesting to see what's happened with him because of, like I say, he's been dropped, he's been hurt multiple times now, and I mean, when you think about the fight before the Haney one, like I say, the Zarya one, he kind of did get dropped, and then he kind of just pulled Zarya down with him, and then it didn't get called as a knockdown, and perhaps that could have even changed the whole tide of the fight. That could have, it's a close fight in general. It could have swayed the scorecards. It could have done a lot, but of course it didn't get called a knockdown. But you could clearly see he was hurt there. And then Haney, moving up to super lightweight division for that fight, he hurt Prograis multiple times, and that was very surprising. Of course, Haney was never realistically known for having the most power down at the lightweight division, and even against Ryan Garcia when he came in versus Haney, he was way overweight and had a lot of things that might have been going in his way and benefiting him, but he seems to be completely outstrengthed by Haney seems to be completely outstrengthed by Garcia, and Prograis was just consistently being told he is the one that's going to be the powerful one and the one that's probably going to hurt Haney, but Haney, like I say, hurt Prograis multiple times, so even perhaps not a powerful puncher can hurt Prograis. And like I say, Catterall isn't realistically known for being the most powerful punchers, but like I say, any shot he could hurt Prograis with if he catches him off guard. He stands quite tall, Prograis, and like I said, I don't think his balance is anything too excellent, and his footwork in general is quite poor. He definitely does square up when he is in close to you. I think he's becoming a bit hesitant because of this style in which he's taken upon himself, where he's trying to become a bit more of a boxer and trying to pick his shots a bit better. Like I say, I think there is certain benefits to that style. Like I say, I think his head movement's improved and certain things defensively have improved, but I think he does make himself a bit hesitant, and when he isn't fully committing to his shots, it means he is often being able to get caught with counters when he does come in, because his footwork is just seemingly quite messy and all over the place. I don't think he utilises his range well at all. I don't think he really lands consistently with a jab. He just often throws out quite a strong jab for not really too much of a reason. His confidence, like I say, coming in since this new style he's developed, I think maybe has taken a bit of a knock. And, of course, it's going to be interesting to see because Haney was able to capitalise every time he pretty much came in. And then, it made him not really want to come in too much if he's going to want to commit to versus Catterall. When he tries to outbox, like I said, I don't necessarily think that's his style. Realistically, that works that well for him. I think, defensively he has improved, but there is still attacking things which I'd like to see improvements on for himself. He can be timed coming in, and like I say, Catterall was definitely able to do that at least for a little bit of time versus Taylor. He can be hesitant. Dealing with angles, I think, is something in which he can struggle with. I don't think, like I say, Catterall is necessarily too much of an angle puncher, but if he is consistently landing a jab, I think he doesn't handle speed that well. Prograis and his hand speed and his speed in general isn't too excellent. He can wait too long. He fights at a slow tempo, which probably will favour Catterall as well. Getting his jab in, like I say. Finding different ways in, like I say, is something else which is limited for himself. He's quite a big target as well, and so any fighter would have probably quite a lot of success being able to land shots on him. Like I say, I think he squares up and he overcommits in his work, and Catterall with the fast hands in which he has is probably going to be able to land counters of his own. Catterall is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Catterall will win via unanimous decision. Possibly he could drop Prograis, but I don't necessarily know if I see that too much. I think he'll have a lot of success behind his jab. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Prograis' head movement can play any bit of a factor, and also the pressure in which Prograis is going to put on. Perhaps if it goes into a later round, he might end up growing in confidence, because I think, like I say, Catterall does seem to slow a little bit. Catterall might be able to land the big shots. I think he does have solid counters. I think if he can utilise his jab, he can really make Prograis hesitant in coming in and have a lot of success again from that. You can pretty much win a whole fight just from using the jab alone, and I think Catterall perhaps will be able to do that if he does want to, but of course he probably will want to put on a bit more of a show. Of course, like I say, headlining the first Co-op Arena live boxing event, so we'll have to wait and see which type of style and which in that aspect comes out. But like I say, I think he'll win via unanimous decision relatively comfortably. I think Prograis is not able to keep up with these younger guys coming through anymore, and then I could speak on to who he could go on to fight next. Catterall, various names. There are so many names in this super lightweight division. Just to name a few, which I don't necessarily think he'll go on to fight next. Pitbull Cruz. Not necessarily sure what's happening with him next, because he was talked about getting the Valenzuela rematch, and then like I said, that doesn't seem to be happening anymore. And Valenzuela seems to maybe be fighting Hirooka next, which is a great fight in itself, so I have to wait and see that one. Of course, Barroso is still around in the division as well. Sims Jr. vs Duarte is a great Golden Boy fight, which is happening on the Riyadh season show with Bill Smith versus Ramirez. As well as that, Ramirez versus Barboza Jr., like I mentioned, is a great fight that's happening as well. Possibly we could see the winner of that fight, something like a Catterall. That wouldn't surprise me too much. Like I said, I don't think Valenzuela, he would fight him. Romero is coming off a relatively good win after the loss before, so he's still a name that's around, but like I say, I don't necessarily think we'll see him versus Catterall next. Lopez, don't really know what's happening with Lopez. I believe he's still holding two of the belts, but what's going on with him, nobody really knows. He seems like he wants to move up in weight, but when's that going to happen? Not too sure. He's having a bit of time out at the moment, and you never really know what's going on in the mental kind of headspace with Teofimo Lopez. Puello is another good champion as well, and Matias, of course, is still around. People have brushed him aside very quickly. Matchroom has seemingly dropped him after the fight versus Paro, and after how much they kind of invested into him and how much they really wanted to push him when he came through and when he was coming through, similar to that of Prograis, for him to then be dropped straight away, it's interesting to see. So perhaps he might be reluctant to work with Matchroom, but you never know, that could happen. Haney could still be an option, of course. There was, of course, the talks versus him versus Sam Martin, but I don't necessarily think Haney is bothered by that fight at all. It seems like he's having a bit of time out though, so he might be having like up to a year out or something like that. So we don't necessarily know how long that's going to happen. It would have been interesting to see if he'd have won the Garcia fight and everything was fair with that fight, if he would have been able to keep progressing the way that it was going and doing as well as in which he was doing. It's going to be interesting to see when he does come back what he's like and what type of version of Haney we get. Or the winner of Paro versus Hitchens, a matchroom fight. I think that could make sense. I think we probably will end up seeing that next. It's a good fight. Paro fighting a mandatory challenger. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be too keen to fight someone like a Jack Catterall, because there's not really too much in it for him to fight him, and I think he's going to want to go on for unifications if he does beat Hitchens. But like I say, if Hitchens wins, I think that fight would definitely make sense versus Catterall. If he doesn't, Paro might be swayed by some money to go on to fight Jack Catterall, and yes, that could be a best way for him to get into a world title kind of route, or a world title shot, in which he has been waiting for a little bit now. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like it if you did indeed like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.